Shocking secrets of Leviticus revealed at midnight what they don't want you to know. It was a chilling night, the kind where shadows held their breath and the moon hung high like a voyeur. The clock struck 12, and the world seemed to hush. In the tiny town of Crestwood, something was stirring, lurking just beyond the reach of the ordinary. Whispers of an ancient manuscript in Leviticus drew curious souls into a night of secrets. What would they find hidden in the sacred texts? The air crackled with anticipation, swirling with dread and excitement alike. As the townspeople gathered in a dimly lit church, candles flickering like fireflies in the darkness, an old tome, weathered and dusty, sat atop the altar. Its pages hinted at bizarre rituals and forbidden knowledge that could unravel the fabric of their very lives. What if this scripture held the keys to powers long thought lost? Imagine the gasp when hands trembled, reaching to turn each page that spoke of offerings and strange sacrifices, blood-red ink staining the words like a warning. Yet, it wasn't the rituals alone that captured them, the truth barely concealed beneath the surface was more astonishing. Was it true the ancients had the ability to summon spirits with a mere incantation? Gasps echoed through the crowd, eyes wide with shock as an unexplainable chill swept through the room, silencing even the bravest hearts. A skeptical voice broke the silence. What is this nonsense? A woman, her voice trembling, shot back, it's the truth, I can feel it. Could they really handle the truth, or would this night bring unforeseen consequences? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As nerves frayed and anticipation rose, an ominous crack echoed through the halls. The doors blew open, a gust of cold air sweeping in as shadows recoiled. The old church creaked like it was alive, drawing the breath from their lungs. What they believed would merely be a night of debate and curiosity quickly morphed into a battle against the unknown. Heartbeats quickened, each flickering candle cast wild, dancing shapes that played tricks on their minds. With anxiety mounting, someone shouted, "It's too dangerous." But it was too late, the truth was already unfurling, and the risks began to spiral. A flicker of hope lingered. If they could grasp the knowledge, maybe they could control what lay ahead. But with that hope came a foreboding dread. Would they dare to unlock the ancient power beneath the scripture, or would it consume them whole? As the room plunged into darkness, only the whispers of the old tome filled the air. What lurked in the shadows, and would they survive the night of revelations? The candles sputtered, their flames flickering like desperate hearts. The darkness felt alive now, pulsating, tightening around the townspeople like a predator ready to pounce. Tension hung in the air, sharp as a knife, nobody dared to move. Did you hear that? A voice quivered from the back of the church, breaking the heavy silence. The others turned slowly, eyes wide, time stretching as if the shadows themselves were listening. A soft rustling echoed against the walls, more unsettling than the sudden burst of cold air. "Let us get out of here!" Someone shouted, panic slicing through the crowd. But the doors stood firm, as if an unseen force held them closed. Desperate hands clawed at the wooden barrier, but the church seemed to be claiming them, trapping their fears inside. "Stay calm." A voice rang out, stronger than the rest. It was Laura, a librarian who had always been considered the practical one. She stepped forward, clutching a candle, its flame dancing defiantly against the shadows. Her eyes locked onto the old tome. "We need to look at it now." With a collective shudder, the townspeople focused on the book. The atmosphere crackled with trepidation, and an unspoken agreement formed. They were in this together, whether they liked it or not. Somebody stepped forward, trembling, and reached for the cold, worn cover. A gasp escaped the collective lips, echoing in the gloom. The moment the page turned, an unnatural vibration coursed through the church. Words leapt off the page, swirling up into the air like a storm. Symbols and phrases wrapped around them, ancient chants clawing at their minds. The candlelight flickered violently, casting enormous, grotesque shadows. "Get away!" Someone screamed, a voice quaking with fear. But it was too late. As the vibrations grew louder, a deep rumble shook the foundation of the church. Cobwebs danced in the corners, as dust swirled from once still rafters. An incantation. Laura gasped, her voice barely a whisper. "It's here, it's in the text." Her eyes widened as she realized the truth. The words were more than mere markings, they were a gateway. Suddenly, a shadow leapt from the pages, swirling in an ethereal mist, and the temperature dropped further. Ice crept into their bones, igniting a primal fear. "We're summoning something," another voice cried, filled with terror. But what could they do? The fabric of the church was unraveling, and they teetered on the edge of something otherworldly. Laura's heart raced, leaping in her chest. "We have to recite the counter words," she shouted, the urgency climbing. But who among them knew how to silence the being that now hovered, dark and unyielding, at the altar? "Can you read it?" A voice screeched through the chaos, frantic eyes searching Laura's face. She nodded, adrenaline spiking as she focused on the text, her fingers fumbling through the soft, ancient pages. She could feel the heat of something unspeakable building, but the weight of knowledge anchored her. Then, the dark mist began to coalesce into a form, its features obscured, but the malice radiated. They were not alone anymore. Panic roared through the group, turning fear into chaos as they stumbled back, colliding with each other. "You have to speak," they urged Laura, desperation cresting into frenzy. The voices roared in a tumult of uncertainty and dread, drowning out her own thoughts. "Please," someone begged, their eyes wide and glistening, "make it stop." As shadows twisted and surged, Laura squared her shoulders, locking eyes with the raw essence of fear itself. Just as she prepared to summon the strength to speak, a low, guttural growl emanated from the dark, silencing everything into a dreadful hush. What price would they pay for the knowledge that lay buried within the pages? And would they uncover the truth before it was too late? A beat of silence hung in the air, thick enough to choke on. The guttural growl reverberated, trembling through the bodies of terrified townspeople. They instinctively drew closer to one another, huddling, seeking comfort in the familiar warmth of their neighbors. But there was no safety here. Laura's gaze darted to the tome, words still pulsating with an eerie glow. She felt its weight in her palms, heavy with history, dread, and an echo of power. Her heart drummed a frantic melody in her chest. She needed to fight back, but what were the counter words? "Come on. You have to do something," someone shouted, their breath hitching. Anxiety surged. It was as if fear were an infectious disease, spreading through the crowd with each frantic heartbeat. "Trust me," Laura managed, forcing the words past a throat that felt dry as dust. Just be quiet for a moment." The growl swelled, curling around them, a living thing. It morphed into whispers, escalating into wild shrieks that filled the church, threats and promises tangled together in an unholy chorus. Their voices howled like a gale, ripping apart any remaining courage. "No!" Laura screamed, grounding herself. She felt the flicker of the candle light in her grip, each flicker a beacon in the oppressive dark. "I can stop it." As she began to read, rolling the alien words off her tongue, the shadow stirred. Darker than night, it loomed larger, feeding off the fear, twisting in on itself as if trying to comprehend her challenge. A sudden gust slammed against her, nearly knocking her off balance. A nearby woman fell, tripping over unseen roots, grasping at her ankles, panic tightening around her. "Get up! Don't give in!" Laura yelled, her voice slicing through the suffocating terror. With every word Laura recited from the tome, the mist wavered, swirling uncertainly, battling against the energy her pronunciations unleashed. The symbols danced before her eyes, reshaping into images, visions of the past ripped from the fabric of time, flashing with grotesque clarity. A temple filled with worshippers, shadows cast by unknown entities, a cruel ritual that made her stomach churn. Together, she cried, channeling her will into the trembling townspeople. Help me. Follow my lead. And they did. Slowly, awkwardly, voices started to join hers, each individual tone casting a thread into the darkness. The combined sound swelled into a rhythmic chant, competing against the malicious entity stirring in the shadows. The air, previously electric, began to transform, caught between the light of their words and the darkness still hanging in the corners of the church, but the shadow was strong. As the power of combined voices rose, so too did its fury, an unrelenting howl echoing through the sanctuary. The growl melded into anguished wails, a cacophony battling for dominance. Laura's voice cracked as shadows lashed out, biting at her resolve. Keep going, she urged. Desperation dripped from her words. You can't let it win. Yet, doubt clawed at her heart. Were they really fighting back, or merely stoking the fire? She glanced at the book again, its pages begging to be read, urging her to explore forbidden knowledge further. What other secrets lay hidden within the shadows of those words? Suddenly, as if in response to her thought, the spectre coalesced into a face. A visage formed, malicious and hungry, eyes glinting with dreadful intelligence. Time suspended, Laura's words caught in her throat. Your souls are bound to me. It shrieked, a chilling promise thicker than any fog. And in that moment, Laura understood. There were heavy prices to pay, and the cost would be more than they could ever imagine. Could she hold the line? Could they withstand the clash of wills? Or would one moment of weakness spell their doom? She took a deep breath, feeling a tremor of hope rising within her. They had to know. She had to find the answer. But then, just as clarity surged, the shadows recoiled and wrapped tighter around them, threatening to swallow them whole. And in the fading light of the candle's glow, Laura could only wonder. What would be revealed next? The whispers grew louder, merging into a terrible harmony of chaos. Laura felt the shadows creeping closer, slithering around her ankles like a venomous serpent. Panic surged within her as she struggled to maintain her focus. The faces in the crowd twisted with fear, their eyes wide and frantic, reflecting the same terror thrumming in her chest. Don't stop, Laura urged, pushing away the creeping dread. Keep fighting. The candle flickered violently, its light pulsing like a heartbeat, casting warped shadows across the walls of the church. The sinister visage twisted in delight, feeding off their fear. It blurred, then sharpened, morphing into more horrific shapes, each one a symbol of despair. A chorus of terrified voices rose, but doubt hung in the air, thick and suffocating. What if this doesn't work? Someone yelled, trembling. Trust the words. Laura called back, forcing herself to sound confident. They carry power. She could feel their doubt, could taste the bitter remnants of hope clashing against the shadow's hunger. The air felt electric, charged with desperation. The shadows surged, a dark wave crashing over the congregation, and the crowd gasped as one, fear rippling through them. Then, stealing her breath, Laura glanced back at the tome. The edges of the pages shimmered with an unholy light, each word promising to unleash something truly ancient. What was she about to awaken? Could the word save them, or would they unleash a terror far worse than they faced now? As the growl deepened and grew, she could feel something in the pit of her stomach, a gnawing instinct that warned her. She could not trust this power completely. Could she? Just read. Someone shouted, their voice breaking, urgent. With a deep breath, Laura turned back to the book. Words spilled from her lips, the alien syllables slipping like water, but even as she spoke, the shadows writhed. They recoiled and twisted, slashing at her, a desperate response to her defiance. She could feel the pressure against her words, pushing back, each syllable becoming harder to form, heavier on her tongue. Keep it up. She cried out again, rallying the crowd. The more they shouted, the brighter the candle shone for a heartbeat. It was almost blinding, illuminating the sanctuary like a beacon through the encroaching darkness. But the moment was fleeting. The light waned and flickered, casting long, ominous shadows across the room. The growl turned sinister, a rolling thunder threatening to drown her voice out completely. "Do you really think you can stop the inevitable?" The apparition taunted, its mockery echoing against the stone walls. Laura clenched her fists, her heart racing. Was it right? Did they really want her to stop? The words flowed from her, but she could feel a shift in the mood. The chanting was growing frantic, desperate, but doubt trickled back in like poison. "No. They want us to fight," she shouted, her voice straining against the dark. "Together." Suddenly, the shadows recoiled, almost as if shocked by her willingness to confront them. For a moment, she glimpsed vulnerability, a chink in their armor. Her hope surged. Maybe they could turn the tide, but just as quickly, the dark entity coiled tighter, tightening its grip. Screams filled the air, piercing through the church like jagged glass. It was a visceral reminder of the toll the confrontation was taking. "Help me. Focus." She pleaded desperately, directing her gaze across the crowd. She saw faces contorted in fear, but there were a few. A mother clutching her child, a brave old man, a steady hand reaching out to hers. "Give me your strength. We can do this." With renewed resolve, she continued to chant, feeling the threads of their wills intertwining with hers, pulling her spirit upwards, lifting her hope. Then, as she reached the heart of the incantation, she felt an icy touch at her back, as if the darkness clung to her, demanding her surrender. In that chilling moment, she understood the real price they would pay. What if she would not survive this? What if the price of unraveling this curse meant their sacrifice? The shadows shuddered, and the dark face tilted, eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Are you ready to accept your fate?" it hissed, drawing closer. As she grasped the last phrase of the chant, the intensity skyrocketed, and the air crackled ominously. Laura took a deep breath, knowing it was now or never. Where would this choice lead them? Would it break the spell or bind them forever? Fear skittered up her spine as she let the final words escape, echoing into the abyss. But silence fell abruptly, a pregnant pause before chaos erupted anew. What if they weren't just confronting darkness, but awakening something much more powerful? The silence hung heavy, thick like the air before a storm. It settled into the cracks of the stone church, suffocating, oppressive. Laura's heart pounded in her chest, a wild drum echoing her terror. A flicker of confusion passed through the crowd, their faces frozen as they awaited the fallout from her final words. Then, the shadows stirred, convulsing and undulating like living smoke, coiling around them with a sinister intent. A roar erupted, shattering the quiet like glass. It wasn't just noise, it was a cacophony of despair, a manifestation of every fear locked away deep in their hearts. Laura stumbled back, gripping the tome tighter, her knuckles whitening. The candle flickered violently, and she watched in horror as the light dimmed under the weight of the darkness. The figures in the crowd shrank back, their breaths shallow, eyes wide with fear. The air crackled as a sinister energy pulsed in the room, and the shadows turned toward her. "You thought you could summon us and escape unhurt?" The entity sneered, its voice slithering into her mind, wrapping around her thoughts like a vine. "You have awakened us, little girl. Welcome to your undoing." Chilling dread spiraled through her. This was no simple confrontation, they had conjured something ancient and powerful. "We want to let you take us," she screamed, desperately trying to harness the strength of those around her. "Fight back." But doubt had settled in the congregation like a damp fog. Faces flickered with uncertainty, and Laura could sense the fractures forming, hope wavering like the candlelight. "What do we do?" a voice quavered. "What if we made it worse?" "No," Laura shouted back, though her own conviction trembled. The shadows pulsed ominously, feeding off their fear, intensifying their despair. "We stand together. We fight." Lines of energy began to wind between her and the tome, the words still glowing faintly, a tether between their struggle and something beyond. With each syllable she chanted, a surge of defiance ignited in her heart. The flicker of light flickered dangerously but burned brighter with every voice that joined her, beating back the shadows. Then the entity manifested, a towering silhouette, its features coalescing into a serpentine grin, dark and glimmering with malice. How delightful! It crooned, its voice like velvet laced with blades. Humanity's most naive hope, a collective belief that courage can thwart destiny. You really think you can resist? A tremor ran through the gathered crowd. One person screamed, another stumbled back, faith crumbling under the weight of reality. Laura felt it, the loss of unity, the fear snaking through the crowd. Together. She called out, but her voice was shaking now, betraying her steely resolve. You are stronger than this. Do not give in. Suddenly, her words collided with a flash of chaos as the shadows surged forward, curling around her as though attempting to squeeze the breath from her lungs. A jagged pain shot through her chest, and she gasped. She could feel her strength waning, memories of laughter and warmth slipping from her grasp like grains of sand. Laura! A familiar voice shouted from the depths of the crowd. It was Ben, panic lacing his tone. Laura, don't give in. At the sound of his voice, a spark flared in her. She fought back against the oppressive wave, pouring out everything she had into the incantation. We will not be your puppets. We choose to fight. The darkness recoiled. For a heartbeat, it shrank back, leaving behind a space filled with pulsing light. The crowd rallied, voices merging into a wave of sound, pushing against the shadows, but then, just as they felt they were turning the tide, the air vibrated with a deep growl that climbed from the pit of the earth itself, shaking the stones beneath their feet. The shadows spiraled, thick and heavy, rising higher, taller, and more formidable. This isn't just an incantation, the entity hissed, its voice now a terrible howl. You've called forth powers you cannot comprehend. Are you ready for the truth that awaits? As dread pooled in her stomach, Laura's heart thundered. She had only scratched the surface of the horror they had awakened. That thought twisted in her mind. What ancient truth was about to unravel? Was the sacrifice worth uncovering this dreadful knowledge? The shadows roared back with a fury that sent a fresh wave of fear crashing through the crowd. Panic spread like wildfire, faces pale and voices trembling as they clutched each other for support. Laura felt their dread seep into her, twisting her resolve. She gritted her teeth and forced herself to stand tall, knowing she had to be their beacon. Hold on to the light. She yelled, trying to harness the flickering courage lighting up within her and channel it to the others around her. Remember why we are here. But the entity laughed, a sound that filled the church with a dark, chilling energy. You think your little memories can save you? They are no match for the abyss. The shadows, as if summoned by its words, charged forward, swirling and grasping like 1,000 phantom hands eager to snuff out the last flickers of hope. Laura closed her eyes for a moment, battling the suffocating despair washing over her, trying to drown it out, then she saw it, a flicker of bright light deep within her mind, a memory of warmth, laughter, and connection. She clung to it, feeding her own strength with the love she felt for those she fought beside. She opened her eyes again, and a renewed fire ignited within her. Together. She shouted again, desperation spilling into each word. We can push it back. Remember your loved ones. Our unity is our strength. Ben moved towards her, his voice rising above the chaos. We're with you, Laura. He declared, the sound of his unwavering support slicing through the darkness. The chant began again, stronger this time, their voices roaring in defiance against the entity's dark laughter. Over that rhythm, Laura felt a tingling sensation envelop her fingers, the tone resonating with the energy built from their hope. She couldn't falter now, each voice that joined hers was a thread, binding them tighter together against the looming threat, but at that moment, a tremor shook the foundation of the church. The shadows pulsed violently, causing the stone walls to shudder. Dust fell from the ceiling like confetti at a funeral, and the air thickened with an electrifying tension. Fools! The entity howled, twisting its features into a grotesque sneer. You play with forces far beyond your understanding. Let me show you despair. Laura's heart raced, her breath hitching as the darkness surged forward like a tidal wave. A deafening roar echoed through the chamber, sending her sprawling backward. She barely managed to keep her grip on the tome. No! She gasped, fighting against the encroaching dark. The congregation screamed, their voices drowned out by the entity's chilling proclamation as the shadows encased Laura's limbs, dragging her down. Suddenly, from the depths of the darkness, an icy voice whispered inside Laura's mind, cold and seductive. Embrace it, child. Reject your pitiful resistance. I can offer you power like you've never imagined. She squeezed her eyes shut. Images flashed of nightmares realized, of those she loved in torment. No. She cried out, shaking her head. You lie. I want to be part of your darkness. With an intense surge of will, she forced herself upright, teeth gritted with the effort. She could sense Ben beside her, his resolve equally firm, and a glimmer of hope ignited in the shadows of her mind. I am stronger than you. She shouted, pitching herself into the chant once more, each word igniting a fire that pushed against the creeping malevolence. As light fought back against the choking darkness, a scream erupted from the shadows, twisting in anger and agony. It cannot be. The entity shrieked, unraveling as light began to break its tether. But the light flickered. Not all was well, and Laura could feel the pulse of reality rippling around them. What if their fight was for nothing? Keep it steady. She cried, panic creeping back into her voice. Was the truth they had unleashed too close to the heart? And, could they invert the tide before it swallowed them whole? With every ounce of strength she gathered, what other terrifying revelations awaited them amid this dangerous dance between light and darkness? The darkness pulsed, almost alive, tightening its grip on Laura as despair clawed at her chest. Just when she believed she could push back the shadows, they surged forward again, relentless and angry. Over it all, the entity's laughter filled the air, mocking her every hope. Falter now, and all is lost, it taunted, the voice echoing like thunder, shaking the very air around them. The congregation was close, faces twisted in fear, some collapsing under the weight of the creeping shadows. Fight it! Laura screamed, but the words felt small against the wall of madness threatening to engulf them. With every breath, it felt like the dark was snaking into her lungs, thick and suffocating, but amidst the turmoil, a whisper of familiarity sparked in her mind again. Images of home-warm mornings, laughter at the breakfast table, her mother's voice bringing comfort fueled her resolve. She wouldn't let this entity take that away. Not now. Think of the light, she shouted, desperate, the tome in her hands glowing faintly. We each carry it within us. Focus. One by one, the voices began to rise again. Ben stood beside her, gripping her shoulder with grim determination. They were in this together. I'm with you, Laura. Always, he shouted, rekindling the flame of courage. The atmosphere shifted, tension intermingling with a glimmer of hope. The congregation rallied, each person clinging to a memory of brightness, igniting something powerful within the dark confines of the church. As their collective strength rose, the shadows began to tremble, retreating slightly. Laura's heart soared. Maybe they could do this, but it wasn't over. The entity screeched, a sound so piercing it felt like eyes slashing through her skin. You think a few flickering lights can free you? It coiled tighter around her, the shadows spiraling in a cyclone, closing in, pushing her to the ground. The walls shook violently as dust rained down, and Laura felt her resolve teeter. Keep going. She cried, desperation lacing her voice. Don't give in. We're stronger together. Each heartbeat resonated with shared determination, a collective pulse fighting against the darkness consuming them, yet fear still clawed at Laura's insides. What if the shadows were just biding their time? What if they were stronger than even her most cherished memories? Her thoughts raced ahead, clouded by doubts. Suddenly, a vision struck her. A glimpse of the tome, its ancient script dancing with light, revealing untold secrets. Could this be the key? Ben! She shouted, tearing her gaze away from the shadows momentarily. The tome. It holds the truth we need. We must unlock its power. He nodded sharply, inspiration firing in his eyes. We need to read it together. That's how we'll stand against this darkness. As they took a step closer together, hands clasped over the tome, a surge of energy pulsed from it, pushing back the shadows inch by inch. Light flared as they focused, drawing from each other and every flickering memory in the room. The ancient words began to glow, forming shapes in the air. Suddenly, darkness rose in a vortex as the entity shrieked, fury igniting. No! You will not take this power from me! It roared, thrashing against their light. The church walls trembled, cracking under the immense pressure. Laura could feel it, a thick weight bearing down on her, terrifying yet electric. They were on the brink of something monumental. Keep pushing. Together. She urged, each word a defiance against the chaos, but just then, confusion rippled through the air. The tome flickered, the light dimmed, and shadows bent unnaturally, reaching for her, for Ben. You won't escape this. It will devour you. The entity howled, but within its threat lay something more: questions, something it feared. What was the hidden truth behind the tome? And could they harness it before it consumed them entirely? As they braced for the next moment, Laura felt the pull of the unknown weaving through the frights and furies they faced. Would they discover the key in time, or would it all be lost to the abyss? The moment felt electric, almost as if the air had caught fire. Laura and Ben stood side by side, their hands clenched tightly around the tome, the flickering light waging war against the shadows that twisted hungrily around them. The congregation held its collective breath, caught in the throes of fear and hope, as their eyes locked onto the glowing pages. Laura, look! Ben shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos as he pointed toward the tome. Symbols were swirling, mixing with the light, forming shapes that spoke to the heart of this battle. It was almost like a heartbeat, a rhythm vibrating through the room that resonated deep within every person present. With focused intensity, they recited the ancient words, their voices rising, fusing into a powerful crescendo. The air thickened as the energy pulsed stronger, pushing against the oppressive darkness. Yet, with every flicker of light, Laura sensed the entity's rage deepening. Fools! You think you can wield what you don't understand? The entity screeched, its voice filled with venom, echoing through the high ceilings of the church. You are but children playing with fire. I will feast on your hope. Indeed, shadows slinked forward, long, grotesque fingers clawing toward them, grasping, hungry. The flickering light began to wane, threatening to extinguish altogether. Each heartbeat thundered more loudly than the last, and Laura's chest tightened with dread. Suddenly, a piercing scream broke through the air, not from the entity but from one of the congregation. A woman, eyes wide with terror, faltered under the weight of the dark, and her body went rigid, twisting unnaturally. Laura! Do something! Ben yelled, panic edging his voice. They were losing people. I can't just focus on one. She shouted in return, her voice shaking. The tome throbbed painfully in her grip, as if sensing the danger surrounding them. But deep inside, something else sparked an urge to understand, to dig deeper into what lay hidden within its pages. Wait! She breathed suddenly, recalling the visions that had flooded her thoughts. I can remember an ancient symbol, a protective sigil. It might help. The faint sound of the congregation's voices began to churn into a chant, a chorus of support pulsing through the air. Laura closed her eyes, searching her mind for the ancient image, etching every curve and line into her memory as the shadows inched closer. Just then, she felt a surge of power from Ben's grip, urging her on. What do you need me to do? He pleaded, his eyes bright with determination. Don't let go. We have to project the light, form the sigil together. She yelled. Together, They began forming the shape with their voices and hearts, drawing from the memories of warmth and safety that they had ignited in the others. The shadows recoiled, hissing as the light exploded once more, illuminating the church, reflecting off the fearful faces of the congregation. "Stop! No!" The entity screeched, thrashing violently, the shadows whipping like angry serpents, striking against the encroaching light. But in that moment, it opened its maw, a swirling mass of darkness. As Laura and the crowd pressed on, the entity's words morphed into a chilling whisper, "You know not what you open, you will regret this day." The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating, as an unseen force pulsed through them. Would they truly regret this chance they were taking? As the sigil spun and the light blazed, the tome flickered again, revealing more symbols, overlapping and twisting into an intricate web of meanings. "What is happening?" Ben gasped, the urgency flooding his eyes. "I don't know, but we have to hold on." Laura screamed, feeling the foundation of their battle tremble beneath them. "We can't let it consume us." Everything swirled, chaos and brilliance colliding in a way that felt beyond comprehension. Would the tome's hidden truth save them, or would it expose them to something even darker? In that moment of bright uncertainty, as shadows lashed out with renewed ferocity, Laura knew, they were just beginning to unravel a terrifying mystery, one that threatened to change everything they believed. As the chaos roared around them, one question echoed in her mind: what hidden darkness lay behind the tome's last secret? And were they strong enough to face it together? A pulse of light engulfed the church, forcing the shadows to retreat, if only for a moment. Yet, the entity screeched in defiance, its voice rattling the stained glass, making the air shudder with dread. Laura and Ben could feel the tremors in their bones, that deep-seated fear that whispered of failure. "Keep going," Ben urged, sweat beading on his brow as he willed the congregation to match their resolve. The people, still trembling, raised their voices, layering their hope with every word spoken. Laura's heart raced. The tome in her hands felt alive, its pages flipping wildly as if possessed by a will of their own. The flashing symbols seemed to pulse, resonating with the crowd's energy. She closed her eyes and focused, pulling every ounce of strength from within, summoning that ancient symbol she hoped would bind the darkness. Suddenly, the shadows shifted violently, swirling faster, their form becoming a vortex of despair that threatened to snuff out the burgeoning light. The woman who had screamed earlier struggled within the grip of her own quiet agony, her eyes darting desperate pleas for help. "Just a little longer," Laura shouted through clenched teeth, her voice barely rising above the violent hiss of the shadows. The tome illuminated a new symbol, one distinct from the sigil they had attempted to craft. It glimmered, hauntingly beautiful, but unfamiliar. "What is it?" Ben shouted, eyes wide in panic. "I don't know. It's different." She gasped, heart pounding, understanding dawning with terrifying clarity. This one wasn't a protector. It was a key. "Laura." Ben cut in sharply, breaking her concentration. "We need to focus on the sigil. We can't just know." She cut him off. "This could unlock something. Something we might need to confront." But before she could explain, the shadows lunged again. The lights flickered violently, and pandemonium erupted. One by one, people began to falter, collapsing as the darkness seeped into their very beings. Laura felt their despair, like chains wrapping tightly around her, squeezing the fight from her. Ben's grip slipped slightly, a flash of fear in his eyes. "We can't give in," he yelled, voice hoarse. "Remember the light. We're stronger than this." In that desperate moment, the sense of urgency ignited a flicker of defiance within Laura. With her heart racing, she channeled everything she had, pouring it into the tome, merging the protective sigil they had constructed with the new symbol flashing before her. "Together, Ben. Hold on to the light." She screamed, and as if in response, the energy pulsed, a wave rolling through the church. The shadows shrieked, a cacophony of fury, crashing against the protective barrier they had built. Laura gasped as she felt a shift in the air and electricity that tugged at her, inviting her deeper into the tome's secrets. Something's happening. Ben exclaimed, voice strained but hopeful. They both leaned forward, trying to resist the pull of the darkness, but then came the unmistakable sound of cracking, like ice shattering. The protective energy they had created wavered. The appearance of a fissure, a narrow opening that split the swirling mass of shadows, drew their attention. And from within came a chilling whisper, so seductive it silenced the chaos for just a heartbeat. You wish to see the truth. Dare you to face what lies beneath? It was the entity again, its voice now mocking, filled with a dark promise. As Ben and Laura exchanged determined glances, the shadows shrank back momentarily, revealing what lay behind them: a hidden door, a dark archway that pulsed with an eerie glow. Laura felt fear and excitement collide within her. That doorway promised answers, but also danger. Could they really confront what lay ahead? Laura! Ben! The shouts from the congregation began to fade, the flickering lights dimmed further, casting them into deeper darkness. What happens if we go in? Ben asked, his voice trembling as he took a step forward, his eyes fixed on the archway. Laura took a deep breath, the weight of the moment pressing around her. We might find the truth, or we might lose everything. With uncertainty gnawing at her insides and the echoes of panic resonating in her heart, she took a step toward the archway, drawn to its dark allure. What lay on the other side of that ominous threshold? And would they emerge intact, or become another shadow lost to the void? As Laura stepped closer, the air pulsated, thrumming with ancient energy. Shadows flickered around them, as if the darkness itself was alive and aware of their hesitance. Ben paused beside her, his breath quickening, eyes wide with fear and determination. Are we really doing this? He whispered, his voice barely above a tremor. We have to find out what's behind this door, Laura replied, her mind racing. The truth is the only way we can end this. Together, they approached the archway, which loomed as a black maw pulsating with an unsettling glow. As they reached the threshold, a low hum filled the air, resonating under their skin, urging them forward. Stay strong, Ben said, squeezing her hand tightly. They stepped through, the world around them blurring into a haze of swirling darkness. It was as if the shadows wanted to swallow them whole. But instead of the engulfing void they expected, they found themselves in a vast, cavernous space, an underground chamber, lit by an otherworldly glow that seemed to pulse with life. Is this? Laura murmured, her eyes scanning the room. Vast murals depicting ancient rituals and sacrifices adorned the walls, glowing faintly, the colors shimmering like a living thing. Each image told stories long forgotten, of worshippers enacting their desperate pleas to dark entities for power and knowledge. This is where it all began, Ben whispered, awe and disbelief mingling in his voice. This is what the tome was calling to. They moved deeper into the chamber, fixated on the murals. But soon, their wonder shifted, the air thickened, and the shadows in the chamber seemed to swirl with renewed intent. We should leave now, Laura whispered, a tightening fear in her chest, but then, from the shadows emerged the entity, larger and more terrifying than before, its face contorted, eyes glinting with predatory hunger. You've broken the seal to this place, it hissed, voice dripping with malice. And here, you will meet your true selves. Laura felt the energy in the room shift again, the shadows swirling closer. Their fear saturated the air, thickening into something palpable. What does that even mean? Ben shouted, clenching Laura's hand tighter. Every shadow you've hidden, every doubt you've cast aside, it will manifest here. The entity's laughter roared, echoing around them, making the very stone quake. Face yourselves. Suddenly, shadows darted across the chamber, forming grotesque versions of their own fears and failures. Laura's self-image twisted, morphing into a shadowy figure that towered over her, whispering all the things she thought she could not do. You're not strong enough. You're just a librarian. Its voice echoed, dripping with venom. No. She cried, pushing back against the manifestation, feeling it tug at her thoughts, drawing energy from her uncertainty. Laura, fight it. Ben shouted, his face contorted in panic as dark tendrils snaked around him, pulling him down to his knees, morphing him into his own despair, visions of loss and failure swirling around him, agonizing memories clawing at his resolve. With a fierce determination, Laura grasped the tome tightly to her chest and summoned courage deep within. "You don't own us. We choose to be stronger," she shouted, her voice resonating, cutting through the darkness. "Those fears don't define us." As she spoke, the light from the tome began to pulse, illuminating the shadows and revealing the figures for what they truly were, manifestations of doubt and fear, but nothing more than echoes of their insecurities. With every word Laura declared, she could feel Ben's spirit rising beside her, a heartbeat of defiance joined in solidarity. "Come on, Ben. Fight back," she yelled. The shadows surrounding him faltered. The entity howled in fury, but the radiant light emanating from the tome enveloped them both, pushing back the darkness threatening to consume them. "Together," Ben gasped, finding strength in Laura's words. Regaining his footing, he rose with her, voices merging, stronger together. The shadows shuddered, transforming, shrinking back in terror. The entity screamed, "You cannot defy me. You are mine." But the light exploded, igniting the caverns in a blinding brilliance. Against the roaring darkness, they united their voices in a powerful invocation, rallying the strength of their fears, their hopes, and memories of love twisted into resilience, blasting light outwards. As the light cascaded in waves, it shattered the shadows, each pulse of energy obliterating dark remnants, turning them to dust in the air. With every syllable they chanted together, the chamber glowed brighter, the dark bond binding them severed, shattering the entity's grasp upon their hearts. The shriek of the entity echoed, a final desperate gasp, before it shattered like glass, dissipating into nothingness, leaving only remnants of darkness that crumbled away into faint whispers. Breathless, they held tightly to each other, tears filling Laura's eyes, flooding with relief. "We did it, we really did it," she whispered, disbelief merging with joy. The chamber began to pulse with warmth, light flooded in, radiating from the tome, illuminating their path. As they stepped back toward the threshold, hands intertwined, they could feel the weight of what they had overcome, an ancient cycle of fear now broken. They emerged back into the church, greeted by gasps and a collective sigh of relief, the shadows that had haunted them now nothing but echoes of the past. In that moment, they knew they were transformed. No longer merely townspeople, but warriors of light who had faced the darkness and chosen to shine bright. As the last of the shadows faded, Laura turned to face the crowd, her voice steady and strong. "We will face whatever comes next, together. We carry this light within us." Ben squeezed her hand tighter. The congregation erupted in applause, a wave of hope washing over them. In the shadows of fear, they found strength, unity, and love, ready to face the dawn of a new beginning. So stood Crestwood, forever changed, resilient against the secrets that once shackled them. They embraced their past, ready to forge a brighter future. Side by side, the air crackled with a sense of closure, grounding them in a shared heartbeat. The darkness would no longer reign. Together, they had rewritten their story, and as the dawn broke over Crestwood, awakening a new day, a sense of urgency filled the air. It was time to share their story. Laura turned to the camera, a big smile on her face, and a gleam in her eyes. "Wow, that was intense. If this story resonated with you, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for our journey. Smash that like button, and let us feed the algorithm so we can share more incredible stories like this. Don't forget to flood the comments with your reactions and theories about what just happened. How did the story resonate with you? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Together, we can keep shining bright. Let's illuminate the world with our unity and courage.